Hi, welcome to the video solutions to the simple interest practice questions. In this video, I'm going to go through the video solutions to each of the questions on the simple interest practice questions. If you want to recap on simple interest, please go to www.corbettmaths.com/contents and go down to video 236A, and that is the video tutorial on simple interest. Okay, let's have a look at these questions. So question 1. James invests £200 for 1 year in a bank account. The account pays simple interest at a rate of 3% per year. Work out the amount of money in the account at the end of the year. Okay, so James is going to receive interest and he's receiving 3% interest a year. So let's take his £200 and let's divide it by 100, and that will tell us 1%. So 200 divided by 100 is equal to £2, and that's 1%. Now we're trying to find 3%, so we're going to multiply this by 3. So we're going to take our £2 and multiply by 3, and that is equal to £6, and that is our 3% interest that he receives. So James receives £6 interest, and the question asks us to work out the total amount of money in the account at the end of the year. So we take the £6 and we add it onto what he started with, which is £200. So we'll do 200 plus 6, and that's equal to £206. So James will have £206 in the account at the end of the year. So let's have a look at question 2. Question 2 says Sammy invests £400 for 2 years at 5% per year simple interest. Work out the amount of interest Sammy gets. So Sammy invests £400 for 2 years at 5% simple interest. That means that we're going to work out 5% of £400, and that's how much interest Sammy receives every single year. So let's work out 5%. So we'll take our 400 and we'll divide it by 100 to get 1%. That's equal to 4. Then we take our 4 and we multiply it by the percent we want, which is 5. 4 times 5 is equal to £20. So Sammy's going to receive £20 every single year. Now Sammy has the money invested for 2 years, so we're going to do 2 times £20, and that is equal to £40. So that means that Sammy's going to receive £40 interest altogether. So the question asks us to work out the total interest Sammy receives. That's going to be £40. Okay, let's have a look at question 3. So question 3 says Carolyn invests £700 for 3 years at 2% per annum simple interest. Work out the total amount of interest Carolyn receives. So Carolyn receives 2% per year simple interest. So we need to work out 2% of £700, and that's how much interest Carolyn will receive every single year. So we'll take our £700 and we'll divide it by 100 to find 1%. 700 divided by 100 is equal to £7. And then we want to find 2%, so we're going to do 7 multiplied by 2, and that's equal to £14. That means Carolyn receives £14 every single year. Now she's invested the money for 3 years, so we're going to do 14 multiplied by 3, and that'll be the total amount of interest that Carolyn receives. So 14 multiplied by 3, well 14, 28, 42. So Carolyn will receive £42 interest. If the question asks how much money Carolyn had in the account in total, we'd have to add that £42 onto the 700, but the question just asks for the total amount of interest, so it's going to be £42. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So question 4. £2,700 is invested for 2 years at 5% per year simple interest. Work out the total interest. So the £2,700 has been invested in an account that pays at 5% per year simple interest, 5%. So let's work out 5% of 2,700. So we'll take our 2,700 and we will divide it by 100 to find 1%, and that's going to be 27. And then we're going to multiply that by 5. Well, 27 multiplied by 5 is equal to, well, 20 times 5 is 100, 7 times 5 is 35, so it'll be £135. So that means that £135 is earned every single year in this bank account. Now, the money's been invested for 2 years, so if we take our £135 and we multiply it by 2, that'll tell us how much interest is earned in total. £135 multiplied by 2 would be 270. So that means that £270 is earned in interest. So the question says, work out the total interest. That would be £270. Okay, let's have a look at question 5. So question 5 says, Faith invests £800 for 3 years in a bank account. The account pays simple interest at a rate of 0.4% per year. Work out the total amount of interest Faith has got at the end of the 3 years. So we want to start off by finding 0.4%. So we're going to work out 0.4% of £800. So we'll take our 800 And you can either do this in one of two ways. We could use a multiplier, and I'll talk about that in a second, or we could divide by 100 to find 1%, so that would be equal to 8, and we'll take our 8 and we'll multiply it by the percent we want, which is 0.4. So we multiply by 0.4, and that would be equal to £3.20. So that means that each year Faith earns £3.20 a year in interest. And the question says it's been invested for 3 years, so we'll take our £3.20 and we'll multiply that by 3, and that will tell us the total amount of interest that Faith receives. So £3.20 multiplied by 3 would be £9.60. That means that Faith earns £9.60 in interest. Now, I did mention that we could use a multiplier. If we wanted to find 0.4% on our calculator, we could multiply by 0.004. Because 0.4%, well, to change that into a decimal, we would divide it by 100, so it would be 0.004, moving the 4 from the tenths column to the hundredths and then the thousandths. So moving the 4 2 columns to the right. So that would be the multiplier if you wanted to. So you could take our 800 and multiply it by 0.004, and that would give you your £3.20, and then you can multiply that by 3 to find the total interest. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, so let's have a look at question 6. So question 6 says Nina invests £1,500 for 4 years at 2.5% per annum simple interest. Work out the total amount of money in the account at the end of the 4 years. So in this question, we're told it's simple interest, so we're going to want to work out 2.5% of the initial amount invested, the 1,500, and that'll tell us how much interest is earned every single year. So we're going to work out 2.5% of 1,500. Now you could use a multiplier, and 2% as a multiplier would be 0.02, so 2.5% would be 0.025, or you could just divide this by 100, so moving the digits 2 columns to the right would move the 2 from the ones to the tenths and then to the hundredths, so it would be 0.025. So you could use this multiplier, or alternatively, for the rest of these questions, I'm going to use the finding 1% and then multiplying by the percent I want approach, just because it's going to be quicker and simpler to talk about just one technique. So I'm going to take my 1,500 and I'm going to divide it by 100 to get 1%. So 1,500 divided by 100 is equal to 15, that's 1%, and we want 2.5%. So I'm going to do 15 multiplied by 2.5, and when I do that, I get, that's equal to £37.50p. Okay, so that's how much money is earned every single year, and the money's been invested for 4 years. So we're going to do £37.50 multiplied by 4, and that would be £150. So that means that Nina earns £150 in interest, but the question says to work out the total amount of money in the bank account at the end of the 4 years. So she invested 1,500, so 1,500 plus the interest of £150 would be equal to 1,650. So that means that Nina would have £1,650 in the account at the end of the 4 years. Okay, let's have a look at question 7. So question 7 says Mary invests £8,000 in an account paying 1.2% simple interest each year. Calculate the amount of money in her account after 2 years. So we want to find out 1.2%, because it's simple interest, we want to find 1.2% of the amount she invested to begin with. So let's take our 8,000 and divide it by 100 to find 1%, so that's going to be equal to 80, and then multiply 80 by the percent we want, which is 1.2. And when we do that, that's equal to £96. So that means that Mary earns £96 in interest every single year. And she invests the money for 2 years, so we're going to do 96 multiplied by 2, and that'll tell us how much money she earns in interest. So 96 times 2 would be equal to £192. So that's how much interest Mary earns. But the question asks us to calculate the total amount of money in her account after 2 years. So we're going to take 8,000 and add £192, and that would be £8,192. And that's it. So let's have a look at question 8. Question 8 says £12,500 is invested for 5 years at 1.1% per year simple interest. Work out the total interest. So in this question, we want to find the total interest, and we know it's simple interest, so we want to work out 1.1% of the amount that's initially invested. So £12,500 is invested to begin with, and we want to work out 1.1% of that. So we're going to take our 12,500 and we're going to divide it by 100. So that would be equal to £125. So that's 1%, but we want 1.1%, so we'll take our £125 and multiply it by 1.1, and that gives us £137.50p. So that's how much interest that is earned every single year. but the money has been invested for 5 years. So we're going to take our £137.50p and we're going to multiply that by 5. And that tells us the total amount of interest. And when we multiply that by 5, we get £687.50. Now the question asks us just to work out the total interest, so that's our interest, so that's our answer. Okay, let's have a look at question 9. Okay, question 9 says, Jonah invests £400 in a bank account that pays 3.5% simple interest per year. At the end of each year, Jonah spends 3/5 of the interest and gives the rest of it to his brother. How much money does Jonah give to his brother each year? Okay, so the money that's invested is £400 and it's simple interest, so we're going to want to work out 3.5% of the money invested. So we're going to want to work out 3.5% of 400. So 400 divided by 100 is equal to 4. So we know 1% is 4, so to find 3.5% we will multiply 4 by 3.5, and that gives us £14. So that means that every single year Jonah earns £14 of interest. But we know that Jonah spends 3/5 of the interest and he gives the rest to his brother. So we can work out how much he gives his brother in two different ways. We could work out 3/5 of 14, and that tells us how much money Jonah spends. And then we could take that away from the 14 to see how much is left for his brother. So that's one approach. Or another way to look at it is, if he spends 3/5, that means that he must give his brother 2/5. So I'm going to work out what 2/5 of £14 is, and that's how much money that he will give to his brother. So to find 2/5 of it, well, we'll divide by the denominator. So we'll take our 14 and we'll divide it by 5. And 14 divided by 5 is equal to 2.8 or £2.80. And then we want to multiply by the numerator. So we're going to want to multiply that by 2. So we're going to do £2.80. multiplied by 2, and that's equal to £5.60. So that means that 2/5 of the interest is £5.60, and every single year he gives that to his brother. So how much does he give to his brother each year? £5.60. Now remember, we could have worked out 3/5 of the £14, so we could have taken 14 and divided by 5 to get £2.80. That then multiplied by 3 would be equal to £8.40, and if you took that away from the £14, you would get £5.60. So both of those approaches would work. Okay, let's have a look at question 10. Okay, so question 10 is a non-calculator question. It says Evie is saving up to buy a guitar that costs £109. She opens an account at Corbettmaths that pays 3% per annum simple interest. So simple interest. She puts £800 into the account and she does not make any deposits or withdrawals. So she leaves that money in the account. After how many whole years will Evie have earned enough interest to buy the guitar? So we know that the money's been invested at 3% simple interest. So if we work out 3% of the initial amount of money invested, the £800, that'll tell us how much interest she earns every single year. So £800 divided by 100 is equal to £8. So since 1% is 8, we're going to do 8 times 3 to find 3%. 8 times 3 is equal to £24. So that means that every single year, Evie earns £24. So after 1 year, she will have earned £24. So that's not enough to pay for the guitar, which costs £109. After 2 years, well, add another 24, well, that would be 48, still not enough. Add another 24, well, that would be 72, still not enough. Add another 24, that's £96, still not enough. And add another 24, well, that would be equal to 120, which is enough money to pay for the guitar. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So how many years will it take? 5 years. So question 11 says, Johanna invests £800 for 20 years in a bank account paying simple interest. At the end of 20 years, she has earned £320 interest. Work out the annual rate of interest. So she's invested the money in an account paying simple interest. So that means if we divide the total amount of interest she's earned by the number of years that she's invested for, which is 20, that'll tell you the amount of interest that she earns every single year. So if we take 320 and divide it by 20, well, that's going to be equal to 16, because 320 divided by 10 would be 32, and divided by 2 would be equal to 16. So that means that every single year, Johanna earns £16 of interest. So that means that whatever the rate of simple interest was for the bank account, whenever you worked out that percentage of 800, that must give you 16. So if we express 16 as a percentage out of 800, that'll tell you what the interest rate is. So if we write 16 out of 800, and convert this into a percentage, that will tell you the percentage, that will tell you the rate of interest. So we want to get this to be a percentage, so we're going to want the denominator to be 100. And we can divide 800 by 8 to get 100. And 16 divided by 8 is equal to 2. So it's going to be 2 out of 100, which is 2%. that means that it must be 2% simple interest. And let's check it. If we work out 2% of 800, well, 1% is 8, 2% is 16, and it was invested for 20 years, 16 multiplied by 20 would be £320. So the annual rate of interest is 2%. Let's have a look at question 12. So question 12 says Percy invests £2,000 in the bank account for 4 years and it pays simple interest. At the end of 4 years, Percy has £2,140 in the bank. Work out the annual rate of simple interest. So we know it's a simple interest bank account and we know how much he has in the bank account at the end of the investment, which is 2,140. So if we do 2,140 and take away how much he invested, the 2,000, we can work out how much interest he earned in total, and that would be £140. Now he invested it for 4 years, so if we take our 140 and divide it by 4, that'll tell you how much interest he earns every single year. So 140 divided by 4 is equal to £35. So Percy earns £35 in interest every single year. Now, since the saving account pays simple interest, whenever we work out that percentage of 2,000, we're going to get £35. So if we express 35 as a percentage out of 2,000, that'll tell us the percentage interest rate. So we're going to write 35 out of 2,000, and we're going to want to convert this into a percentage. Now, this is obviously a calculator question, so we can just divide 35 by 2,000, and 35 divided by 2,000 is 0.0175. So that's it expressed as a decimal, but we want a percentage, so let's multiply by 100, and that would tell us that our percentage would be 1.75%. And that's it. So that means that the annual rate of simple interest was 1.75%. And again, if you take your 2,000 and work out 1.75% of it, you should get £35. And if you multiply that by 4 and add that onto the 2,000, you should get 2,140. Or not should, you will. Okay, let's have a look at question 13. Okay, so let's have a look at question 13. Question 13 says Solomon wants to invest £600 for 3 years. And he's got 2 different banks he can choose from. He can choose from Corbett Bank or Banks R Us. Now, Corbett Bank pays 2% per annum simple interest, whereas Banks R Us, they pay 2.5% for the first year and then 1% per annum simple interest for all the following years. Which bank should Solomon choose? So let's start off with Corbett Bank. So let's start off with Corbett Bank. So he earns 2% per annum simple interest. So if we work out 2% of 600, that'll be how much money he earns every single year. So let's take our 600 and divide it by 100 to find 1%. That's equal to 6. And then we're going to multiply that by the percentage we want, which is 2. So 6 times 2 is equal to £12. So every single year he earns £12 in interest at Corbett Bank. And he invests for 3 years. So 12 multiplied by 3 is equal to £36. So if he invests with Corbett Bank, he'll earn £36 of interest, and his total investment at the end of 3 years would be £636. Okay, Banks R Us. So Banks R Us pay 2.5% per annum simple interest for the first year. So let's work out for Banks R Us how much he would have at the end of the first year. So we want to work out 2.5% of 600. So we'll take our 600, divide by 100, that's equal to 6, and then take our 6 and multiply it by 2.5, and that'll tell us how much interest he earns in his first year. So 6 multiplied by 2.5 is equal to 15. So that means that Solomon earns £15 of interest in his first year, but he earns 1% per annum simple interest for the following years. So he earns 1% of his investment is £600 for each of those years. So 1%, we know that's equal to 6, so he earns £15 in his first year. He earns £6 in his second year, because that's 1%, and he earns another £6 in the third year, again another 1%. So if we do 15 plus 6 plus 6, that's equal to 15 plus 6 is 21, plus 6 is £27. So he earns £27 of interest if he invests in Banks R Us, or he earns 36% if he invests with Corbett Bank, so therefore Corbett Bank would definitely be the best choice. Okay, let's have a look at question 14. Okay, question 14. So question 14 says Laura invests £2,400 in an account that pays 1.2% simple interest per annum, and she invests the money for 5 years. At the end of each year, Laura gives the interest to her sisters, Hannah and Freya, in the ratio of 3 to 7. How much money does Freya receive in total? So first of all, Laura invests £2,400 in an account paying simple interest of 1.2% each year. So if we work out 1.2% of 2,400, we'll work out how much money Laura earns every single year in interest. So 2,400 divided by 100, that's 1%, which is equal to 24. So we know 1% is equal to 24. Now if we take our 24 and multiply that by 1.2, we'll find how much money she earns in interest every single year. So 24 times 1.2 is equal to £28.80. Now every single year she shares this money between her sisters, Hannah and Freya, in the ratio of 3 to 7. And we want to work out how much money Freya receives. So let's add together the numbers in the ratio, so 3 and 7. So 3 plus 7 is equal to 10. And we're going to divide the total amount of money she shares out by 10. So we're going to do £28.80 divided by 10, and that's equal to £2.88. So if we take our £2.88 and we multiply that by Freya's number in the ratio, which is 7, that tells us how much money Freya receives every single year from her kind sister, which would be £20.16. Now the question says that Laura invested the money for 5 years. So every single year she earns £20.16. If we take that £20.16 and we multiply that by 5, we'll see how much money she gives Freya in total. So multiplying that by 5 would give us 180 pence. So that's £100.80, and that's it. So how much money does Freya receive in total? £100.80. So let's have a look at question 15. So question 15 says Jackson invests £3,000 in a bank account that pays 2% simple interest per year, and he invests the money for 7 months. Calculate the amount of interest that Jackson earns, and this is a non-calculator question. So let's work out how much money Jackson would receive if he invests the money for a year. So it's simple interest, so if we work at 2% of 3,000, we'll see how much money he should receive each year. So 3,000 divided by 100, that's equal to 30, and then 30 multiplied by 2, the percentage we want, is equal to £60. So every single year, Jackson should receive £60 in interest. Now Jackson didn't invest the money for a whole year, he only invested the money for 7 months. So 7 months is 7/12 of a year. Now providing Jackson's bank account lets him take the money out and receive the interest, if we work out 7/12 of 60, we'll work out how much money he should receive in interest in that time. So to work out 7/12 of 60, we'll take our 60, we'll divide by the denominator, so 60 divided by 12 is equal to £5. And then if we multiply by the numerator, 5 multiplied by 7 is equal to £35. So Jackson should receive £35 of interest. Okay, let's have a look at question 16. Okay, question 16 says Nicole invested some money for 3 years in an account that pays 2% per year simple interest. She earned £7.20 in interest in total. How much money did Nicole originally invest? So we know she invested the money for 3 years. So if we divide the total, £7.20, by 3, we'll work out how much money she receives every single year. So £7.20 divided by 3 is equal to £2.40. So every single year, Nicole earns £2.40 in interest. And because it's 2% simple interest, that means that 2% of the amount she invested is equal to £2.40. Because to work out the amount of interest you receive each year, you work out the percentage of the amount of money invested at the beginning. So 2% of how much money she invested, let's call it Y, is equal to £2.40. So 2% of Y, the amount she invested, is equal to £2.40. So if we know what 2% is, we can work out 100% quite easily. One way would be to divide both of these by 2, so 1% of Y would be equal to £1.20, and then multiply by 100, so 100% of Y would be equal to, and 100 times £1.20 would be equal to £120. So she invested £120. Alternatively, if we knew what 2% was, we could have just multiplied by 50 to get 100%, and if you multiply £2.40 by 50, that would also be £120. And again, we can check our answer. If you take £120 and work out 2% of it, that's £2.40, and if you multiply by 3, that earns you £7.20 in interest. Okay, let's have a look at question 17. Question 17 says Noah invested some money in an account that pays 1.5% per year simple interest for 4 years. George invests the same amount of money in an account that pays Y% per year simple interest for 3 years. At the end of their investment, Noah and George both have the same amount of money in their account. Work out the value of Y. Now we know that Noah and George invested the same amount of money. So let that amount of money that they invested to begin with be £100. Let's just choose an amount, £100. And let's start off by focusing on Noah. Noah invests the money at 1.5% for 4 years. So let's work out how much money Noah would have at the end of his 4 years. So the money invested is 100, so if we divide that by 100 and multiply by 1.5, we'll see how much interest he gets every year. 100 divided by 100 is equal to 1, and 1 times 1.5 is equal to £1.50. So every single year, Noah earns £1.50. Now he invests the money for 4 years, so 4 times £1.50 is equal to £6. So that means that at the end of the 4 years, Noah would have £106. Okay, now George invested £100 as well, and he then at the end of his 3 years has £106, because that's what we're told. He invests the same amount of money. So we say George, he invests £100, and at the end of 3 years he has £106 as well. And he earns Y% per year. So he invests the money for 3 years, so he earns in total £6 interest. And if we divide that by 3, that'll tell us how much money he receives every single year. So that's equal to £2. So he earns £2 every single year. Now it's out of 100, so 2% of 100 is £2. So every single year he earns 2%. So the value of Y, well, that would be 2, or here it's the rate of interest would be 2%. So let's just check it. If he started with £100, well, 2% of that is £2. Multiplied by 3 years is £6. So he would have the same starting amount and finishing amount as Noah. And that's it. So question 18 says, Louisa plans to invest £600 in a savings account for 3 years. She visits 2 different banks and makes some notes on the interest rates they offer. So the notice she made is that Bank A offers simple interest of 0.8% rounded to 1 decimal place, and Bank B offers simple interest of 0.7% truncated to 1 decimal place. Louisa says she will earn more money if she invests in Bank A than Bank B. Explain why she may be wrong. So the main difference is the words rounded and truncated. So let's make sure we know what these mean. Well, rounded means the number's been rounded to be 0.8. So that means that it could be a number below 0.8. So it could be 0.79 or 0.76 or even as low as 0.75. So it could have been as low as 0.75%, and that would round up to 0.8. It could have been higher. It could have been 0.81, 0.84. It could have been up to, but not including 0.85%. So anything up to 0.85%, but not including. Bank B, it says the amount of interest, simple interest, is 0.7% truncated to 1 decimal place. That means that the numbers after the 7 have just been got rid of. They've just been ignored. So it could have been 0.71%. It could have been 0.747%. It could have been 0.789%. It could have been anything as high as 0.7999 and so on %, because what truncated means is that anything after the 7 is just being ignored. Now if we have a look at these numbers here, we could see that Bank A, the interest rate could be as low as 0.75, whereas Bank B, it could be up to but not including 0.8%, so anything that has a 0.7, so it could be 0.7999 and so on. So explain why she may be wrong. Well, let's give those 2 examples. Bank A could be 0.75%, whereas Bank B could be 0.7. You could do 8% here, or 999 and so on %. So just showing you that, just giving an example that Bank B could be higher than Bank A. Okay, let's have a look at part B. So part B says Bank C offers simple interest of 0.9%. Work out the total amount of interest Louisa will earn if she invests in Bank C. So first, how much did she have to begin with? So she had £600 for 3 years. So she's investing £600 for 3 years. So because it's simple interest, let's work out 0.9% of £600. So 600 divided by 100 is equal to 6. And then 6 multiplied by the percentage we want, 0.9, well, that would be equal to 5.4 or £5.40. Now it's been invested for 3 years, so if we do £5.40 multiplied by 3, that will tell us how much interest she earns. So £5.40 multiplied by 3 is equal to £16.20. And that's it. So these have been the video solutions to the simple interest practice questions on Corbettmaths. If you found them useful, please like this video, please subscribe to the channel, and if you need some further recap on simple interest, watch that video that mentioned, that video number 236A on Corbettmaths.com. And if you want to take this a bit further, feel free to watch video 236 on compound interest, and that's when you earn interest on the interest. And that's it. Thanks very much.